Today we're going to decide whether I am successful, and then we will discuss about what it took me to become that successful. We'll talk about 5 traits that I have adopted in life and that have made me quite successful, in my opinion. But it's up to you to decide. Let's see who I am. Shankar Ponsel is my name. I have successfully immigrated at the age of 28 from Luxembourg to the United States. I attended a public Ivy League, Miami University of Ohio, where I graduated with summa cum laude honors. I have then moved on to opening a marketing agency that makes 6 figures these days. We're a team of 6, and I have a wonderful girlfriend that co-leads that agency with me. I live in the best state in the world, Texas, San Antonio, Texas to be precise. And I want to really tell you guys that this is everything by design and by choice. When I was 16 years old, I discovered San Antonio because I was visiting the United States for the first time. And I loved it so much, I said, one day I will live here. And that's exactly what's happening right now. I live here, living my American dream. I'm very healthy too. A few years ago, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called ankylosing spondylitis. And it was predicted to me that if I wouldn't go start taking certain medications, I would be in a wheelchair and I would become paralyzed. None of that happened because I started adopting a very healthy lifestyle. I am vegan and I make sure I get enough exercise. So that is all very important. And I consider myself to be a very successful individual. I am very much driven by goals, and my goals in life really are mainly focusing around this marketing agency that I co-lead with Andrea. Right now we are a 6-figure agency, but I do want to achieve 7 figures very soon. Why do we do this? The why is always important, as you know. Personally, I just want to create circumstances in which my employees can live the life they deserve. I want to create circumstances in which I can live the life I deserve. Furthermore, of course, there's really one person that I owe a lot to in my life, and that is my mother. I want to be able that she can have whatever she needs, should she ever need my help. Now let's go and enumerate those 5 traits I developed as a child that really built the foundation of success for me. I'll go over them quickly so you don't have to watch the entire video to learn the 5 traits. And after that, I will go a little bit into some more detail that will explain why and how I developed those. But here they are. Number 1, intelligence. Being smart, school smart, but also street smart. Number 2, love work, hardworking. Number 3, the ability to live at your means or slightly below your means. Number 4, health. And number 5, resilience. Okay, so those 5, I'll repeat them again. Being smart, hardworking, living at or below your means, healthy, and being resilient individual. So let's think a little bit about my childhood so you can understand how all of that came about in my life. I want to also preface that we all know that we are very much molded by our circumstances. A lot of what we can achieve early in life is predefined by our parents, how they treat us, how they are situated in life, and also other factors such as the zip code we grow up in, or maybe depending on where you live, even your race, the color of your skin, the language you speak. All of those things do play a factor, and I want to acknowledge that. And I want to also acknowledge that I grew up in a very socially minded, wealthy country where I had a lot of factors that were tending towards the positive side for me. That doesn't mean that my childhood life was necessarily easy, but it was a good childhood. I think the way to best describe it is that I had a childhood that allowed me to understand and learn what it means to be uncomfortable, to not have everything in abundance, and that there is a difference between having a lot and having just enough. And that is something that is very important to realize. It's really a blessing to know that there is this difference, because a lot of people who are just born into wealth or born into well-being don't know. You cannot know what you cannot know. You cannot know what you have not experienced. You cannot see the dark if all you have ever known in your life is the light. I grew up with a single parent. My mom was a single parent, and she had, rightfully so, to arrange life in a way where she was able to provide for the small family that we represented. And therefore, she did something that I am very grateful for. She decided during a certain phase of my childhood that it was better to stay at home with me than going to work full time and focus on income. That's a decision that I don't want to have to make ever in my own life, but she had to, and she decided that there was an importance, an emphasis to be set on being there for me and with me. And I don't think it was a bad decision. But what it meant was that we had to live in humble circumstances. And that was not a bad thing. That was a good thing, because as we go through challenges in our lives, these challenges sharpen us. I like the metaphor of metal that is sharpened into a saw, right? So every adversity that we meet in our lives is really an element that sharpens the saw that we represent in life. The house we lived in during a large part of my childhood was an affordable house that we rented, but it was also an old house, and it did certainly not meet the standards of what most people in the country of Luxembourg would have recognized as a normal standard of living. There are a few things that I remember about that house that really made me understand that it's okay to be a little bit uncomfortable. Back then, I didn't know any better. You don't know what you don't know, right? Everything that we discuss is very relative. But I knew that it was a cold house. The house I'm speaking about didn't have a heating system. The only heating source in the house was an oven in the living room, an oven in the kitchen, and I believe a small oven in the bathroom. And we are talking wood-fired ovens that if you do not provide them with new wood, the fire dies and the oven turns cold. What that meant was that when during the winter, and Luxembourg has long and cold winter periods really, during those times of the year when I had to go to bed or get up, it was cold because the ovens were out or because whatever, it was cold. And that's something that I vividly remember, that I took notice of that. The windows of that house were not insulated and the window panes were very thin. During the winter when it was really cold outside, I remember that in the morning my breath must have condensated on the window panes and there was literally a thin layer of ice or snow, and I could use my nails and scratch down the window panes and literally have little heaps of snow inside of my room. It was that cold. There was also a house that we lived in for a short period that had the restroom in an attached unit that used to be an old stable. And there was no heating in there whatsoever. Just picture a toilet in an old stable. And for longer periods, it was not even connected to running water. So I remember times where we would have to use a bucket with water to flush the toilet. So I know what it feels to be slightly uncomfortable. Again, no big deal, nothing that hurt me, but it was uncomfortable. And it is just good to realize that being uncomfortable is okay. The other aspect that the lifestyle brought with it was, again, my mom was a single parent and we had to live under humble conditions. We lived in small villages and there was a certain air of being on the social fringes of society. We were not outcast or anything like that, but people in general are a little anxious to associate themselves with other people who represent something that they feel uncomfortable about or that they are afraid of. Such as, for example, being a single mother living on a tight budget. Or, for example, being a single mother with a child who decides that her child does not need to attend church. These things, again, are not really a problem. They just created an experience in my childhood that let me understand that people saw differences between who we represented and what society as a larger norm represented. And the takeaway here is that I learned that it was okay to not be part of that norm. It was okay. Naturally, I was not able, because we lived on a tight budget, I was not able to get all the latest and nicest toys that my friends would get. I typically would get them in a delayed fashion, 2 or 3 years after a certain toy was released. I would get it as a hand-me-down from my cousins very often. I remember the Game Boy, the Nintendo Entertainment System, things like that. It's just, yes, I got it, but I didn't get it right away. My mom was very careful not to spend money on non-essential things, and they were non-essential at the time. Don't get me wrong, I eventually always got everything because I had family members who took care that I did, such as my aunt and also my grandparents. One thing that a lot of people might not know is that at the age of 16, so as a young teenager, I did my license to fly aircrafts, and that was something that was rather expensive, but that was achieved with money that my grandfather had set aside for me to give me when I was gonna turn 18. And I told him, listen, I really, really want to get that pilot's license. So I was given that money a little bit earlier. And now, of course, you cannot say anymore that I had to live within humble circumstances, right? Because who gets money to do a pilot license? So I know it's a little contradictory in a sense, but I'm specifically referring to the early childhood phase here, where I was between the age of 1 and maybe 8 or 9, I'm not sure. That's the time I'm referring to. So out of all these circumstances, at some point in my primary school curriculum, I decided for myself that I would create a situation in life where that was no longer my life that I had to accept. All the things that I described to you that were not a big problem, nonetheless, I decided I want to create a life for me where I can have more options. I can have the toys right away. I can live in a house that has a heating system. I can be, which nowadays I don't care anymore about that so much, but back then I did. I can be part of society, I can be part of the people who have everything. And I saw that there was an opportunity in being a good student. So very early in life, I developed a lot of ambition to be good at school, because that was the one thing that I could really use to my advantage to differentiate me from others and make sure that I became very smart, and I just turned into this avid learner. I remember my mother didn't really have to be behind me to study. I just took care of it. For the longest time also, actually for my entire high school education phase, I was at a boarding school. And there was oversight, but I didn't have to be overseen. I was just self-driven and motivated. And I was always just the very ambitious, striving kid. I was not a troublemaker or anything. And that's how I ended up here, in a life that is really a dream life that I believe many people would want to be in my place. And the reason I'm recording this is because I want you to sit down right now and think about your challenges that you have in your life right now, or that you had in your past. And instead of feeling bad about those challenges or adversities, I want you to recognize that they are really just elements in life that sharpen your saw to prepare you for whatever is ahead of you. you will be so sharp that you will cut through everything that is between you and your goals. It just needs patience, and it needs resilience, and it needs intelligence, and it needs living at or below your means, and it needs having a good health, right? Because you cannot really pay for health no matter how rich you are. If you are not healthy in your mind, in your spirit, and in your body, it's very hard to achieve those things. So look at your adversities and cherish them, embrace them, knowing that it is those very same adversities that will take you to greatness and that will take you to where you need to be or want to be in the future. Thank you so much for listening to this speech. If you want to stay in touch, you know how it works. Subscribe to the channel. I also have an Instagram account, Shanks in Texas, that you might want to follow. And I will see you again on this channel in about a week, okay? Until then, take care and bye-bye.